Hello, everyone. It's Charlene Lee, and happy Tuesday to everybody. Got to remember where I've been and been traveling all over Montana in the freezing cold weather for those of you who are experiencing that in the US. So, very happy to be back in San Francisco. So, today I'm going to be talking about job security and the concerns that our employees, our team members, or even we may be feeling as disruptive leaders around generative AI. And I'm going to be sharing some interesting research that came out from SurveyMonkey in December. But I wanted to talk about this, especially following up from my live stream and content from last week about how generative AI is transforming HR. And this week, I wanted to talk about it from the employee perspective. Because as you can imagine, there's a lot of concern, fear, angst, just a lot of energy and focus by employees on how is generative AI going to impact me? How is it going to impact us as a society, as cultures, as organizations? But very specifically, how is my job going to be impacted? And do I have job security? So, what I'd love you to do today is to just, again, share where you're coming from. It's always interesting to see where people are chiming in from, but also share today how are you communicating with your teams, with your employees, about what the impact of generative AI is going to be on their jobs. How is it impacting the way they do jobs? And also, how are you addressing any concerns that they may have around their job security? Over the winter break, I had a chance to meet with a lot of family members and friends, celebrating the turning of the year. And it came up over and over again. I can see, they would say, that generative AI is going to change my job. And I really worry about my future prospects because the things that I do today, generative AI is going to do much better than I will. And so, what does that mean? And they're not hearing anything from their employers. So, today I want to talk about how to think about this. And let me just share some of the research first of all. Let's see, here we go. So this is from SurveyMonkey, CNBC SurveyMonkey, and they put out a survey that looked at a lot of different areas and topics. And one of the things that they talk about is also the use of AI. So they found that 29% of their survey base have used AI at work. So this is becoming something that's again not completely adopted by everybody, but a significant number of people are using it. But more importantly, they're using it at work and they're seeing their work changing as a result. And if they're not using it directly at work, they probably have used it or seen it or heard about it. And a lot of the negative press, which is around AI is going to take away our jobs. And so I want to talk about how they felt about this one particular question. And the question was, how concerned are you about it? And what they found is that 42% across the board said they were concerned. And this is either very concerned or somewhat concerned. And only 56%, again, just a bare majority, said they were not concerned to various levels. And what I have in this slide here, and let me just make it a little bit bigger, is that you can see, and I'm going to take away this banner so you can see it better. I'm going to change it back here. Okay, here we go. You can see that it differs by what level you are inside the company. So if you're an individual contributor, you are much more likely to say that you are concerned. And as you go up in the organization, you're less and less concerned because obviously your jobs are not being automated to the extent that individual contributors are. Now, let's take another look at how this is changing. And by the way, I'll put up a QR code and everything in just a second before you can get these things. So here we go. There's a QR code. I'm just going to block a little bit. And I will also put in here the slides where you can get them. If someone can put that into the chats and comments, I can't put into all the comments, especially on LinkedIn. But you can go get the slides at charlenelee.com/employee-job-security. I'm going to hide that for now. So, well, you can see it. Good enough. All right. So, and then you can see it by generation too, as well. So the changes, again, 42% across the board are concerned. A little bit more likely to be concerned if you're younger in age, Generation Z, Gen Z, millennials, And as you get older, I'm Gen X, and boomers, less concerned. And then I thought this was also very interesting, just another cut of the data by race and ethnicity. And so what we can see here is that, again, across the board, 42% are concerned. But if you're non white, you are more likely to be concerned about this. Again, I think this adds to the general overall concern around job security. Interestingly, there wasn't so much of a difference with gender, a little bit more concern from women, but not significant. Here, it's quite significant, especially for Asians and Blacks as compared to whites. It's a significant difference. And the reason I show all of this is because I think it's important to understand the tone and the attitudes of people right now, and especially across different employee groups, across age and generations, about job levels and against race and ethnicity. Because the concerns that people bring to the table are these underlying concerns they have about job security. So you layer on all those things around job levels, ethnicity and race, age, and then you layer on top of the economic concerns. And are you going to raise a concern, raise your hand and go like, I don't know about this generative AI. What are we doing with this? Are you going to be that disruptive person to say this in your organization where you just want to keep your head down oftentimes and not say anything? So, in a time when we need more involvement for employees, you can see that there's concerns around across the other areas that may impact the ability for you to get feedback and have greater transparency with your employees around what's going on with generative AI. So, I raise this because you should be taking the pulse of your organization and understanding what is going on. How are people feeling about this? Just because they're not saying it doesn't mean that the concerns aren't there. So I want to go into a little bit about why employees are concerned in the first place. And let me just throw up this one other slide again, just to have a bit of content here. First of all, again, as I mentioned, the employees are seeing the disruption, as compared to other sorts of digital transformations or business transformations, which are driven internally by the organization. Think, reorganizations or acquisitions, and new technologies that are coming in at the enterprise level. Generative AI is so decentralized and so distributed. Anybody with a mobile phone or access to a web browser can use it, and they can see it directly. So there's no hiding what's going on, and they know exactly how their jobs will likely change, and as a result, that they could be potentially out of a job in the future. The other part that's aggregating this situation is that people are not hearing from their organizations. Well, this is clearly changing our jobs. What are we going to do about it? And a lot of the work I'm doing around my book is this fact that most organizations do not have a cohesive, coherent strategy about how generative AI is going to be used by the company. Again, most companies are still just getting up to speed. Many of them don't even have guidelines yet. There's no sense of direction. People are starting to use it in places across the company in smaller ways, but people can see. They can see how generative AI is going to change your jobs, and yet they're hearing nothing from their leaders. So this is a key point to understand. I think the best way to address the concerns your employees may have about job security is to talk about it, is to say, what are your concerns? And to be ready, or as much as you can, to share what you are thinking when it comes to generative AI and its use inside your organization. And the hard part is you may not know right now. You may not even know directionally where you're heading, but you know it's going to be a part of your organization. So what do you say? How do you reassure your leader, your employees? How do you show up as a leader? How do you have these conversations? So I have a couple slides, and I'm not too happy with them because I don't think they completely capture everything I'm trying to say. But the key point here is you want to create trust and transparency and feedback throughout this entire process. Because the reason why your employees are feeling concerned is because they're disrupted. And as somebody who has studied disruption for a long time now, they're feeling disrupted because they do not know where their place is in the world. We feel disrupted when the normal ways of working, the way that we see the world, how we fit into that world is changing. And we don't know where we're going to end up. So we're stuck in this messy middle. And it stays messy and uncomfortable and very frightening to be in that liminal space when you don't know where you're heading. So the best way to do this is, even though you may not get out of that messy middle, to at least give employees a direction, an idea of where things are going. And so I want to lay out a little bit of how I think about and communicate about how generative AI is impacting our tasks, our jobs, and our people. So this is a very simple way to think about this. And this is debunking this myth that AI is coming to take away our jobs. It is not that cut and dry. Instead, what AI is doing is automating certain tasks, and it's also creating new ones. And in that process, jobs will change. Some of the tasks that we've had to do in the past, many of them very mundane and tedious, will go away because we can automate them. And our jobs will evolve. We'll have new jobs that are created. And yes, some jobs may be eliminated because all they do are these tedious tasks that have been done in the past. Some research that I've seen, and I've also just been talking to people where their jobs have changed significantly because you're using AI. What they're saying is our jobs are getting better. They're enjoying jobs more, the work more, because they don't have to do those mundane, tedious things. Programmers and software programmers and engineers aren't having to spend hours and hours and hours of their time checking code. They can use these AI tools to do a lot of that heavy lifting. If you're doing writing, it can check your writing, it can smooth it out, it can help you articulate those things. So people across the board are finding that they can do a lot more. In fact, that same research found that 71% of people said that they found that their jobs were getting better. I'm sorry, it was 74%. I don't have the number right in front of me, but it was a significant number of people found that their jobs are getting more productive. And a small number, I think it was like 15 or 18%, said that their jobs were getting less productive. That's something interesting to look into as well. But I think one of the things to think about is how, if jobs are changing, how are people having to change? And this comes to people having to evolve their skills with training and education. So that draws me to the really important the questions about how do we actually do this? And I just want to encourage you again, if you have any comments, to share how you are talking to your employees about generative AI and any questions that you may have too as well. So let me get into a little bit about how to actually do this. The first and most important thing, and I'll say this over and over and over again, is you have to have a strategy. And that strategy is going to be messy, it's going to be incomplete at this point, but it's important to have one. And I've got a lot of live streams and other content available about how to create a strategy. But I think the most important thing is, as you are creating this strategy, to acknowledge that this is highly disruptive and there are many threats you have to address, but also, very importantly, there are many opportunities. And so if we see generative AI as only a negative thing, we're not looking at the complete picture. So your strategy has to evolve and understand all those changing ideas. And very importantly, have a strategy and a direction that's grounded in values and your strategy, your existing business strategy. I'll give an example. When I talk to many of the early adopters of generative AI, again, these are the people who started back in a year ago, just when ChatGPT came out. They said this is going to fundamentally change the way we do our work, how we create value, our competitive advantages. And at the core of this, we can also see a change in the way jobs are done and our people changing with that. We stand committed to our people, is what they consistently said across the board. Our values are to our people, and it's hard enough to find the people to do these jobs. We want to use AI to enhance them, not to get rid of them. And I thought that was a very important thing that all of them said. They acknowledged that jobs would change and that some jobs may go away, but they made this commitment to do this in a thoughtful way, to evolve people's skills so that they can find other ways to do additional work, ways of adding value inside of their jobs, or to be reskilled into other positions. Because this is what I heard over and over again. There is a war for talent out there. If we have great people who understand our culture and our strategy, who fit in well, who work really well with us already, why would we want to get rid of them? And so the counter to this is that what happens if our CFO comes over and says, well, what do you mean? We could take all of these gains immediately and have it go straight to the bottom line. And the strategy was absolutely crucial in the commitment to the people and their evolution, and then also the commitment to tapping into the opportunities of generative AI, not just using it as a short term way to get profits. And what these companies are doing is they're looking at it very strategically and making the case to the CFO. When was the last time we could actually grow our bottom line, top line and bottom line, without additional people, without additional huge amounts of investments? Let's take this opportunity to get people to be more productive and to be able to direct them into new areas of revenue generation and profits that we couldn't do before. So this is the interesting reason why a strategy is so important. So just going back to that slide again, a couple other things, working very closely with HR to map out how your workforce and will be impacted by this and how it's going to evolve, and also how you will involve people in creating this strategy. And I'll talk about that in the next step. And then very importantly, have guidelines, have governance, have training available so that it's not a black box. And very importantly, communicate and admit this is going to be messy. It is constantly changing. Our strategy may have to change. We may have to back out of some decisions, go back and start over again. But you're better off saying that right from the very beginning. As I like to say, having the strategy written out in pencil, but at least it's a strategy. And you aren't dealing with this black box that employees can't look into, and they're just wondering what's going on, what's going to happen to my job. So, this reassurance, this commitment to creating a culture of feedback and transparency and openness about what's happening with generative AI is extremely important. All right, so I'm going to take a couple comments from people. So, Kate, great to see you. Happy New Year. She's joining from San Francisco. Let's see. We have a comment from Jay. Jay, great to see you. Could you describe how this disruption impacts trust, transparency, and collaboration? That's a great question. So the disruption, basically, if you do not acknowledge that the disruption is even happening, it erodes trust. Because if you don't even say, yeah, generative AI is here, we're looking into it, we are committed to our people, and having this point of view that we believe that generative AI can make our jobs better and make us a better organization. And yes, jobs will change, the tasks will change, but we will figure this out together as soon as and as quickly as possible. We are not committing necessarily to say that no jobs will disappear. But our purpose of using generative AI is not to get rid of jobs, to get rid of people, but to make our jobs and our work better. That is a very, very strong commitment to say we're going to use generative AI as much as possible to create value rather than to destroy jobs. Let's see, we have another question. Oh, comment here. So Michael says, basically, more can do these previously special jobs. They are losing their jobs. Exactly. But I'm sorry, here we go. Make AI responsible for getting people rehired. Yep, it's one of the interesting things about generative AI is actually it's creating new jobs for people. And I'll just give an example. At this one organization that had a lot of call centers, Michael, what they did was they used generative AI to increase the productivity levels of the bottom 25%. So they were at the average levels. And they used it to free up time from the higher level people who were doing more strategic work to go and find new opportunities because they were very close to the customers already and gave them the opportunities to go and create new products and services for their existing clients that they knew the clients couldn't do. And they were using generative AI to create those products. So there is sort of a interesting virtuous circle here. And I don't want to be so Pollyannish to say that no jobs will be impacted. Clearly, the fact that some people, again, being more productive also the types of work they were doing is changing. And so we're seeing this lower tier of work going away, people being elevated, but also requires a higher level of skill for people to be able to do these jobs. All right. So let's see. Any other questions and comments here? Not right now. So I'll go. I'll just continue with my comments here. So the other thing I do think it's very important is to involve employees to build that trust. I mentioned before there needs to be a strong culture of transparency and feedback. And so instead of hiding from the concerns that employees have, it's really listening to them and saying, what are the concerns? And acknowledging you may not have all the answers right now, but these are the questions we're trying to address with the strategy. And knowing that you are working on it, knowing that there are these concerns, acknowledging them is a huge step in creating that sense of trust. Again, that commitment and skills, even in the beginning, is to just create educational classes about what is generative AI, what does it look like, what does it look inside the organization. There are many courses available off the shelf on places like LinkedIn. Next week, we'll have the CEO of Coursera coming in talking about how leaders, but also just how you could potentially use some of those courses there. But you can also use generative AI to create courses that are custom to your organization. So again, the education I think is extremely important, but especially of your leaders. The top 100 leaders in your organization need to get up to speed on how to use generative AI, how it could be impacting their departments and their teams, and then communicating that back to their teams. The leaders in organizations really need to step up and start talking about generative AI rather than saying, I don't want to think about it. I don't know what's going on. It doesn't impact me, because it doesn't impact themselves, their jobs directly, doesn't mean that it doesn't impact their teams or that their teams are not thinking about it. So it's so important, I think, to listen and to involve employees to build that trust. And the best thing you can do to build that trust is to say, we don't know what the answers are completely yet. We have a general direction. We're moving in this way. We know and acknowledge you're feeling disrupted, and we want to involve you. Because one of the most important things you can do, and I've said this last week, is to unleash your knowledge workers to redefine the tasks that they don't want to do anymore. How can you make your job better with generative AI? Get them to actually talk about it. And again, have those guidelines, have the guidelines and governance in place about how you will use and how you will not use generative AI inside your organization. And again, lastly, very importantly, clearly communicate this from the highest parts of the organization. The highest levels that you can, all consistently saying the same thing about what your generative AI strategy is going to be is absolutely essential in communicating and reducing that level of anxiety around what's happening with jobs. All right, so I see a couple other questions here. So Ahmed asked, some companies prevent using AI. What should we be dealing with this case? Great question, Ahmed. So many companies are still saying, we don't know what we're doing, so we're banning all use of it completely. And that's potentially a good initial step, but the follow-on step should be, and we're looking into how to use it, and we're doing this as quickly as possible. And this is where a lot of the work I've been doing with generative AI strategy is thinking about not just the basic use cases, but also how you could be potentially creating or destroying your competitive advantage. How will it impact your business strategy? And so approaching it from a strategic point of view and then taking the smaller steps to approach those things is very important. One organization said that our whole entire competitive strategy is built on creating a great customer experience. So they could see how generative AI could be used to create a better experience. One organization said, we're going to use it to create these virtual agents in our call centers to take the calls that we just don't even think are going to produce. So they have some analytics that can say this call is probably not going to be a very productive call. So they put them on hold and people usually just give up. Now they actually have an AI that can go and talk to them And they spent minimum amounts of money, like less than $5,000 to develop that AI. And they're already generating huge amounts of money, like $250,000 over the past month. So using tools to identify ways to use it inside the organization in ways that could potentially help but not do harm is one initial strategy. Taking no-brainer approaches, for example, checking for code bugs or just using things like Grammarly to check grammar and writing to improve it. There are some very basic things where generative AI can be used with the right training, with the right guidelines and governance already today that are off the shelf that don't require a lot of work. And so I think finding these basic use cases that create so much value for people in their jobs on a daily basis. And even if you're using it just internally and not using it outside, these are all simple, easy steps that you can start doing. So let's see, some other questions here. Let's see, will an AI-based company focus on stakeholder value instead of a narrow focus on shareholder value? Will executive composition change to reflect this? Jay, I love your comments. I'm always thinking about the higher value that's being created. Again, I have some hope because these early conversations with a lot of the companies who are early adopters, they are thinking about stakeholder value, with employees being a very, very important key stakeholder. And again, these are companies that are grounded in very strong sense of purpose and values. They know what their business strategy is. And so they're able to think about how generative AI is going to fit into that. That's not changing those core values. Now, if an organization it's just incredibly focused on shareholder value, they will not take the approach that I talked about. They're going to use generative AI to get rid of jobs, get rid of people potentially. And I think it's incredibly short-sighted because they will not be creating the greatest amount of value for even their shareholders over the long term if they're using it to hit the short-term profit bottom line instead of thinking about the strategic advantages that generative AI can create. So even for the organizations that are very shareholder value focused, CFOs driving to the bottom line, CIOs asking, what is the ROI, the return on investment of generative AI? Until we know all of this, we're not going to make any moves. And my argument back to them is the same as I say to the others, is this is really early on. There is value that you can create already right now. And it's both at the top line and at the bottom line. And so do not be short-sighted and think about this as only a way to remove costs. Because if you do that, you won't be fully taking advantage and again, creating as much value for your shareholders. So I can argue both ways, Jay, for both stakeholders and shareholders, depending on which way their boards and the executive team is thinking about this. It comes down to the same approach, that if you want to create value, you must take a strategic look at this that is longer term and not short term based. So that's what I have for today. I think I'll wait and see if there are a couple more comments, but I do want to share a couple of things that are happening. So next week, I'm very excited to be welcoming my friend, Jeff Maggiancalda, who is the CEO of Coursera. And I saw him use generative AI in his job as a CEO. And this is a not to be missed live stream. It is absolutely fascinating how he uses it and how he thinks about using it strategically. He'll talk about how he does it on a daily basis with his job as a public company CEO, and then also how it has transformed Coursera. And he'll talk a little bit also about how you could potentially use some of their courses. Again, I think it's going to be fascinating to see how he uses it, and it might be instructive and helpful for you to share this also with some of your leaders in your organization and for you to practice this as well. All right, so that's what I have for today. Let me see if there's anything else. I think that's it for now. Again, one other thing, I'm spending all of my time working on the book. And so if you would like to get book updates, you can go and sign up at this URL, bit.ly/AIbook-updates. And we'll be starting to send out regular updates later this month on what's going on with the book. So I'm looking forward to engaging with you around that. There'll be opportunities to read early chapters, to be reviewers, and to, again, just help me write the book, but then later on to just be engaged in it. So lots of activities around that. Please sign up for that, and we will get going with it. All right. And thank you so much again, everyone, for joining. Look forward to hopefully see you joining me on the live stream next week with Jeff. Until then, take care. Bye bye.